Hello again, it's Dr. Coates. It is February 12th, and here's your lecture for Tuesday, the 12th, which I'm calling How to Argue About Poetry 1. And we'll have a return to this subject on Thursday, of course. I just want to make clear that the two lectures for this week are designed to prepare you for the second part of the first exam, which it says on the syllabus is going to be part multiple choice and part essay. So it's basically how to write that essay that's coming up on the second part of the exam. And just to be clear, this is going to be a Blackboard test that will be posted Friday morning, in which you can take whenever it is convenient for you between the time that it is posted and I email you about the fact that it is posted, excuse me, until the end of the day on Sunday, so that would be like 11:59 on Sunday. Blackboard will automatically close the exam portal after your time is up. So I'm going to send around a screencast on Friday with the announcement that it's been posted, with some more special instructions about how to make absolutely sure that there will be no technological hijinks that might jeopardize your grade in the class. And I want you to, I know I can't hear you, but I want you to promise me that you will watch that screencast. In the past, I've had one or two students have some problems with the Blackboard exam function, whether because they had like too many programs open at the same time, or they were writing on a with their mouse. They were writing on a laptop with a touchpad or something like that, and it accidentally clicked out or something like that. You need to be absolutely sure that there's not going to be anything that will cause your session to implode before you're ready to submit the exam. And you can do that. So I'd ask you to watch that video and to take those steps to make sure that you don't get into trouble on that end. So anyway, expect an email from me with some more explanations. So as I'm saying, there are two parts to this exam. The first one, and it will take you 60 minutes, and my intent is that you should take 30 minutes on both. But of course, if you finish up with your multiple choice questions early, you can always spend more time on the essay, and that's basically what I would suggest, going in that order. The first part contains multiple choice questions about passages from poems that we have read from this unit, having to do with the poetic techniques that we covered. And poetic techniques and characteristics, I guess, we've talked about in the past few weeks, and those are genre, persona, irony, metaphor, ambiguity, rhyme, meter, prosody, stanza form, lineation, diction, and tone. And if any of those, if you can't at least connect those terms with the lecture that you should go back and take a look at in order to get yourself more fully grounded in those terms and techniques, then email me and I'll direct you to it. But I can also just say, you look in the lecture archive on the Module 2 page and you'll be able to find them. Obviously, I can't ask you questions about all of these, but you should prepare to respond to all of them and probably familiarize yourself with the poems from the previous two modules, because those will be the ones that I'll be asking you about. I will give partial credit to the next best response on the multiple choice listing. I don't know if that makes sense, but for any multiple choice question that's done through a Blackboard test editor, I supply A through D, A, B, C, and D. And there will probably be one which is obviously wrong. And then of course there will be the one correct answer, but that means that there are two that to varying degrees could also be the right answer. Not that I want to be tricky, but that's the whole point of the multiple choice. So the one that is the second best answer will give you maybe 1 point out of 5, whereas the correct answer will be 5. So a little bit of a backup. If you're doing well, then I'll be able to see that through all first or second answers, and that's worth rewarding. The second part of the exam, the one that this week's lectures are about, is a short essay requiring you to analyze one of the Module 2 poems in 30 minutes or less. To help you with this process, I will be providing you with the claim for this essay, the thesis for the essay, to argue, and some suggestions about what to talk about. I might, for example, prompt you to talk about one or more of the techniques and characteristics that I listed above, starting with, persona, genre, rhyme scheme, figuration, ambiguity. Anyway, just look above on the lecture transcript. But I wouldn't give you the entire list, so maybe like 2 or 3 of those. I might also require you to talk about one or more specific words or phrases within the poem as they're used in the text, and that would be a requirement, right? You could always talk about more than that, but I would ask that in order to make sure that everyone does talk about that, and that would be one of my ways of assessing how well you're doing in relation to the rest of the class. So the reason for providing you with the claim, which might seem like an unconventional choice, especially if any of you have taken a class with me before, are twofold. One, this is a 200 level English class, And the class really the classes where you really start having to come up with your own theses are the 300 and 400 level classes. So it's called textual analysis rather than independent interpretation. So I mean, in that sense, I'm going to be more than happy if all of you can do things with poetry, and then I'll save it in case you want to take more classes in the English major. I'll let them help you know what is the best thing to do with these skills once you've got them. And my second reason is that so far in this class we've focused mostly on skills, and so that's what I'm chiefly interested in seeing you demonstrate with this exam. I'm hoping that by standardizing what you're arguing, I can concentrate on how well you articulate your own reasoning and demonstrate that you can find and use textual evidence to back up an argument. To that end, it could be any argument, really, so I'll go ahead and provide it for you so that this doesn't become too frustrating an exercise. Right? And again, I mean, it's like 30, maybe 45 minutes if you breeze your way through the multiple choice questions. But that's not the amount of time that I would use to come up with like a 2 or 3 page essay, so a double spaced. So to that extent, I feel like if I give it to you, that will make it substantially easier, or at least cut out some of the difficulty that I'm not testing for. So that's my rationale. Keep in mind, though, that I might be asking you to perform a reading of one of our poems in a way that might not have occurred to you before when you read it the first time. So I will make sure to be absolutely clear about my expectations, about the interpretation I want you to support in the essay prompt. Okay? I'll make absolutely clear that the wording indicates precisely what I want you to argue, and if I'm going to require you to talk about certain words or phrases, I will make absolutely clear about that too. Okay? So taking a step back, throughout the Twitter discussions that we've had so far, there have been 4 of them, I've been trying to get students to be more precise with their comments. Consider, whether you're saying something like, I think the Jabberwocky refers to some child's nightmare confabulation of many scary things, or I think the Jabberwocky refers to snails, right? Even though the first statement is probably more correct than the second one, neither statement is persuasive as an argument because no evidence has been given. That's the whole point of backing yourself up. I mean, you can say the right thing, but if you don't know how to prove it, then you're not going to be persuasive to somebody who knows less about poetry than you do. In order to argue persuasively about texts, you need to cite words, specific moments, events, character details, speech, right? You need to cite words, and then you need to demonstrate how you can manipulate those words by showing how they are ironic, or ambiguous, or figurative, or by linking them to other words through rhyme, or by proving that the text emphasizes them through the meter that's been established, etc. By linking your evidence to your claim through what we call reasons, right? A claim is what on a grand scale you think is true. The reasons would be why you think your claim is true, and then the evidence are the things that you point to through the reasons in order to demonstrate to any reader that you have actually backed up your argument in the text. So again, claims are supported by reasons which rest on evidence. It would not be persuasive at all just to simply give someone a claim, right? But it would also be unpersuasive to utter a claim and then just cite a bunch of text, because we all look at the same text, right? And we all have at least the potential of coming up with different readings of that text. So that means that you need to prove your work. Even though I'm requiring you to argue a pre-made claim, in other words, I expect you to be able to demonstrate the truth of that claim as if I were an open-minded and potentially skeptical reader of your argument. And although I think of myself as a nice guy, it is, I think, my job to become that open-minded skeptic when I assess your work. So even though I might be extremely sympathetic to the claim that I've given you to argue, if you don't know how to prove it, then I'm not going to find it persuasive even though I gave you that claim. I hope that makes sense. So as you think about how you might prove a case about a poem to somebody else who isn't you, about what that poem means, right? Consider that a claim, or the thesis, is usually of a higher order of ambition than any of its body paragraphs that support it. So the claim of a short analysis would tell the reader what the poem means, or why it means that. And then the body paragraphs of that analysis would generally set out to explain how you see the poem accomplishing that meaning, through the various methods that we've talked about in this module. I'll be looking to see that every piece of evidence that you use is linked to the claim in some way through these reasons, so that there are no mentions of rhyme scheme or meter that don't support anything in particular, beyond a student proving that they can identify rhyme scheme or meter, right? You need to actually not just provide evidence, but also show how it proves the claim at every step. I'll also be searching for signs that you can be thorough with your reading, within the constraints of the span of time that I've allotted for this exam, and that you organized your thoughts within this sort of presentation. You might consider simply constructing one paragraph per technique that I suggest, or poetic element that I suggest, and sticking to that element as you prove the claim for that paragraph, and then when you're done with it, moving on. Or you might think of 2 or 3 holistic ways in which the elements that I've suggested might be made to support that claim, and then take me through those reasons, talking about all the suggested elements in each paragraph. And in case this isn't clear, the latter path is more suave, and I like it better. And I will prize the effort that you expend more highly if you try that, but I do admit that it's a harder path for the initiate. So if what you have to do in order to get through this process is just go, like, irony, here's all the irony that I see in the poem, you know, here's all the metaphors that I see in the poem and how they support the claim, and that kind of thing, then that is certainly an acceptable option. So this is essentially an open book, and I say book in quotation marks, I guess, because you know, all of our poems are exclusively listed on Blackboard exam. It's also an open note exam. You should feel free to take notes on the poems, or like print them out and mark them up if you like, and then, you know, as soon as you realize what the prompt is, get out your notes. But it is a closed Google exam, and any other internet except for Blackboard, I suppose. You can look on Blackboard, all right, because I don't know how else you would submit this thing. But no illicit Google searches to see how other people argue about these texts, okay? I'm hoping that you'll go back and reread the poems from this unit before the exam and do a bit of pre-work for yourself that matches the advice from last week on how to start reading poems, to identify the voice, setting, and situation behind the poem speaker, then paraphrase what is being said, try to figure out the tone. Right? Those 3 things are great places to start. If that takes you a while, though, it might, you know, actually exceed the amount of time that you were that you've been given to write this essay. So that is why I suggest maybe thinking about how to give yourself a head start by doing some of this work beforehand. Maybe not, I mean, you know, for as many poems as you feel comfortable or you have the ability to do that for. Or you can trust yourself, I suppose. After that, after setting up this pre-work, you might also mark up the poems if you printed it out, or if you have like an electronic copy and an annotator program, to call your own attention to the places in the Module 2 poems where important things are happening, or where the forms of the poem are augmenting or detracting or redirecting from their content. You'll only have 60 minutes for the entire exam, so I feel confident that there won't be enough time for you to dredge something up online and still have time to write your essays. But even given that, I still just want to say, you know, the honorable thing is to follow the instructions that I'm giving you, to do the work yourself and be able to use your own work, but not to borrow from someone else's reading of the poem. Anyway, you don't know what the prompt is until you log in and see what the, you know, what the poem is and what I'm asking you to argue about it. So at that point, the clock is already ticking, and it's much better if you've already decided how you feel, what you feel that the poem is doing and how it's doing it. That will make it that much more easy to argue the thing I'm giving you. So for an early look today about how to argue about a poem, I will direct you to the linked screencast for today about Elizabeth Bishop's poem, The Bite, that we talked about on Twitter last week. There was significant disagreement about the meaning of that poem in the Twitterverse, but at least I know you're all familiar with it. So please join me for that screencast, and I will see you on Thursday.